Today we're going to show you how to change your front brake pads on your 2011 to 2017 Honda Accord EX EXL. And we'll go over the whole thing together. We'll share a couple of quick tips. And once again, welcome to BrakeX. Let's get started. First things first, take off the wheels of your vehicle. And there's two bolts behind your caliper. We usually work on the bottom one first, and then we work on the top one. Now, once the bolts are out, you'll be able to remove the caliper. And there's two bolts for the caliper bracket, one on the bottom, one on the top. Again, we'll work on the bottom one first, and then we'll work on the top one. And once you get the bolts off, you are free to remove the caliper bracket. And now we'll remove the old clips. Just use a flat screwdriver and it should be relatively easy. And now the brackets here, we'll look to clean it up. If you have air tools, you can use air tools. If you don't have air tools, you can just use a simple brush. So what you are looking to do here is to clean up the area for the new pads so it doesn't squeak and it's good to be installed. And just a quick tip over here, try to wear a mask. It's good for you, it's good for your lungs. You know, it's never good to breathe in a lot of dust. And look at this, it's good to go. Nice as new. And the next part will be removing the caliper pins for inspection and lubrication. Now be very, very careful. You do not want to break the rubber part. For older vehicles, it tends to break. So do it nice and gentle. Once the caliper pin's out, you can wipe it all down. And we can apply the new lubricants. And here's a quick tip. You'll want to apply it to the whole surface of the pin, but not too much that it's bleeding. And now you can put it back in. And do the same thing for the other side. And when we're putting the pins back in, we can give it a gentle push and pull to check out the rubber parts, see if there's any crack, anything's broken. If not, we're good to go. And now, it's time to open your new brake pads. Today for demonstration, we are going to use the BrakeX Alpha brake pads. So if you find the video useful, make sure to check us out at brake-x.com. And now, we're going to install the new clips back onto the caliper. Let's grease up the caliper for a bit. Again, the tip is to have it lubricated, not to flood it. And we do the same thing for the other side. And this looks perfect. And now we can put the new clips back onto the caliper. And the caliper is good to go. So now we can put the bracket back on the car. And just a quick tip over here. It's easier for you to mount the caliper first before you really try to tighten the bolts up. And now the bracket's in place, we can wrench it up. Now just to make sure it's tight enough, we'll wrench out one more time. And this is very important. If these two bolts are loose, your whole caliper is going to be shaking like no tomorrow. And now it's time to work on the pads. And just before we put it on the calipers, we want to lubricate the edges of the pads where it sits on the clips and where the caliper piston pushes it. And for the Accord, it comes with a single piston caliper, meaning that only the inside of the caliper pushes towards the outside. And if you take a look at the pads, you'll see a circle on the inner pad, and that's where the piston pushes it. And so we are going to grease up the inner pads first, and it's always the pad with the handle. Again, nice and easy. The right amount of grease is not to flood your pad. And if you apply way too much grease onto the pad, it's actually going to cause it to squeak. And just before we put everything back together, we will need to push the caliper piston back into the caliper. And if you have access to a caliper piston tool like this, it's easy to use. You just put it on and you press it back in. And if not, you can always use a compact caliper piston tool, which spins the piston back into the caliper, which operates more like a C-clamp. And now, this is good to go. And the next step is to put the pads on the caliper. And it's as easy as to slide it in. And now we can finally put the caliper back together. And we can give the pin boots a gentle push over here. We don't want to break anything, we're almost there, just nice and gentle. And we put the bolts back in. Just a quick tip over here, always work on the top one first. It's going to hold the caliper in place. And then work on the bottom one. Alright, once the caliper is mounted, make sure to wrench it up, tighten it. You do not want your caliper loose. And as easy as that, we are all done. And now it's time to put the wheels back on. And just one more tip over here. You can always install one lug first, and it will mount your wheel in place. And now we can tighten the wheel. Make sure to do it in a star shape. Make sure to torque it to 100 pounds.